Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show, where we get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. If you struggle with food and weight like I did, welcome home. Welcome everybody to the Heal Your Hunger Show. So happy to have you here. It is a great day to be alive, and I'm really excited about my guest because we're going to be talking about conscious communication. And isn't that important for we emotional eaters? We need to have really enlightened, conscious communications so that we're not creating strife and trouble in our relationships or attracting people who are hard to communicate with, which just amps up our sense of frustration and our tendency to overeat as a result. So before I get into that, I want to tell you that I am recording this straight in the Secret Sauce group. And what's cool about that is you have the opportunity, if you're part of the group, to comment, to weigh in on this conversation, ask questions, and that's super cool. But not only that, in the Secret Sauce group, which is on Facebook, you type in the Secret Sauce to End Emotional Eating. In the Secret Sauce group, you get support. You find out about the latest and greatest things that Heal Your Hunger is up to. You get invitations to free events, and that's why it's so important all the way around to be a part of the Secret Sauce group. So join us. Go to Secret Sauce to End Emotional Eating on Facebook. We'd love to have you. And if you're here at the Heal Your Hunger show for the first time, welcome. This show's been going for a while, actually. We have close to 400 episodes at this point. And, I'm covering A to Z on how to heal from emotional eating. And it's got nothing to do with food. So I'm covering some really important subtleties to the emotional eater's personality and the way we react to life and the way we stress and react and perhaps cause some of the problems that we overeat over, or some of the stress that we stress eat over. So it's a really good place to be if you're somebody who's tired of the dieting roller coaster ride and you want to finally heal for good. Stop chasing your tail with diets and the roller coaster ride of gaining and losing. I did that for years. I was 50 pounds overweight and it was miserable. So here at the Heal Your Hunger show, we deal with the underlying causes, what drives us to the refrigerator, the true emotional causes that drive us to the refrigerator time and time again. And so this topic is among those things, and that's ineffective communication. So I'm going to be talking with Robyn Smith, who is the founder of Conscious Thriving Relationships. And she shows women how to have healthy relationships, how to attract good relationships, how to have effective communication. That's what we're talking about today. And she really helps couples and individuals shift from frustrated to fulfilled in their relationships. Okay. And she knows that true connection is everyone's greatest longing and birthright. So we talk about trauma in this conversation. We talk about how that informs how we communicate and what to do about it. And she gives 3 awesome suggestions for how to get the ball rolling on conscious communication. So let's tune in now. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Happy Monday. Great to see you. I'm so excited for a new message for you today on effective communication. Yes, we need this, don't we? So that we don't have to turn to food when we're stressed out. We don't have to create more stress by ineffective communication. We don't have to, so much of the time our eating is caused by relationship issues, right? Like that's what amps our stress. That's what amps our worry. That's what causes us to shut down and stuff feelings. So this is an important conversation I'm about to bring to you. So I'm excited about it. If you're here in the Secret Sauce group for the first time or you're new, welcome. I'm so glad you're here, and I hope you're taking good care of yourself. So important, right? I want to introduce you to my guest, Robyn. Hey, Robyn, glad you're here. Since I'm going to
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to have you. So for those of you who don't know Robyn Smith, she is founder of Conscious Thriving Relationships, and she shows women how to heal, dysfunction in their relationships on account of trauma. And this is so important because emotional eaters have trauma. Yes, it's just kind of part of the package. If you're like, I don't have trauma, well, guess what? It's either big T trauma or little T trauma. We all have stuff that, causes us to not feel right, period. Not feel right in our bodies, not feel comfortable around other people. And we all need work in this area. I need work in this area. So I'm excited to have you here, Robyn. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Tricia. It's an honor.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you. And I just find this to be a really important topic. And like I said, I think, obviously relationships aren't easy for anybody, but especially for those of us who have had situations from our childhood, and most of the women who come to Heal Your Hunger have had situations in their past that just kind of skewed the way they see the world. It skews the way they relate to other people. It skews our ability to access our hearts, give our hearts to other people. I mean, it's involved, right? And you know this. And so I think it's just such an important conversation here to talk about how to have more conscious communication. So thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
So let's dig into kind of what's the block, like what gets in the way of having healthy communication in our relationships. And are we talking mostly romantic relationships, or does it spill over into other relationships? I would imagine it does.
It absolutely does. Yeah. The romantic ones are when there's like the most tension because the stakes are so much higher. So that's where we tend to have, the most volatile relationships. But as most of us have noticed, our patterns come with us wherever we go. So
yeah,
we'll find them in work relationships and relationships with our siblings and our parents and our friends and all the things. So
yeah. Got it. So so can we talk about early childhood trauma? And it does come in many shapes and sizes, but how that skews how we relate.
Absolutely. So yeah, that was the answer to your question. You said what are some of the causes of communication issues? It really can be that source of early childhood trauma where there's such a huge array of things that can happen to us, whether it's more direct or indirect. Like if obviously direct would be more like you were abused, you were neglected, you were mistreated in some way, and indirect could just be your mom was in the hospital while you were little, or she died in childbirth, or there was some complications in childbirth, or your parents were arguing and they weren't hurting you, but they were hurting each other, and you were affected by that. So there's just a huge array of things that can happen that when we're little, we take it so personally. We take it in, as we know, we're sponges when we're young, and we're just mapping ourselves based on what's happening in our environment. And when we're not getting our needs met, basically, we're not feeling connected to or attuned to is the word, like your parents aren't attending to your needs, feeling like they're getting you, trying to get you, trying to help you. If they're neglectful, or if they're too preoccupied, or they attend to you sometimes but not at others, so there's an inconsistency. All of that affects our nervous systems, and then it will affect how we show up in our future relationships. I left out a piece I want to add, which is it affects our nervous systems, and it affects how we feel and think about who we are. So it shapes our identity. So if our parents are arguing, we're going to take that on like it must be my fault. Or if dad's in prison, it must be my fault. Or if mom's in the hospital, it must be I'm not good enough. And so that's what we do with it. So it shapes our identity. And then we carry that forward as if people don't love me, I'm not worthy of love, people don't care for me. And, those are the lenses that we wear until we do something about it.
Absolutely. And what I suspect is somebody listening to this might be thinking, or sort of resistant to the idea, that somehow I find that with my clients, sometimes they're afraid to admit they were affected because I feel like they're throwing their parents under the bus,
Yep,
and my,
that's so
and
true.
it's not about that. It's not about blame. It's like, how did I get here? Like, how did I get here with ineffective communication? How did I get here with fear of intimacy or inability to love or trust? And we gotta do some fishing. Like, we gotta do some fishing and seeing how the pattern started. And it's not to blame anybody. We're looking within us, like looking within us. What were our experiences? What were our reactions to these experiences? What were our decisions that we made, and as a small child? Because I know I had sexual abuse as a kid, and I was like, okay, I'm not trusting anybody from now on. Like, it's me against the world. Me against the world. I'm going to protect myself, which I totally didn't have tools to do, but that was my protector. Food and fat were my protectors. So we do have experiences. It's not about blame. It's about taking a look at what happened and starting to address that so we can heal.
Absolutely. And that, our caregivers, most of them are doing the best they can, whether it's a good job or not. They're passing on their own generational trauma and patterns that they learned. So blaming doesn't help anyone. But what can help is to just get the source of the problem, like you said, sometimes we absolutely cannot know, because something happened in the womb or something happened when you were, 2 months old, and you're not going to remember, and no one's going to tell you, or whatever. People aren't around to tell you what happened. So we can't always know the source. And so that doesn't actually totally matter. What matters now is that we're adults and that we can now take charge of our lives. And we can, even if we don't know who's to blame, we can stop blaming ourselves and, and step into our responsibility, our agency, our power, and take charge with how we want to be showing up and do the inner work that's going to help kind of unwind the tangled up, concepts and beliefs of who we are and how we function, so that we can feel more free and alive and playful and
Yeah,
the ability to connect.
I love that. What do you see as some of the main communication pitfalls, in the work that you do?
Yeah, there's so many, and this is kind of like the part two to your other question, which is developmental and early trauma can be part of it, and so can just how we're raised, right? Like what you're learning around you, that sponge idea. So blame and criticism are big ones that I see. And like for me, I grew up with a lot of blame in my household. So it's always like, who left the door open and who turned the heat on and who blah, blah, blah. So always looking for blame. And so I was always on the defensive. And then I learned to pass that on. So that's one example. Other examples are not listening intently, not listening just with open ears, but listening with some kind of rehearsal for what I'm going to say or how I'm going to protect myself or how I'm going to make them wrong. So we most of us don't have good listening skills. And again, that's probably modeled for us. If we were listened to very well, we probably will pass that on too. And also not knowing how to be fully present. A lot of us, we're growing up in a culture that really values efficiency and getting lots of things done and multitasking and, being the best version of yourself. And so we don't often value just being totally right here with ourselves. We value more like, what should I be doing? Who should I be next? And what can I accomplish? And so that's a communication pitfall, because if we're not present with ourselves and with others, it's really hard to understand people and really tune into yourself and understand yourself and what feels true and how you want to communicate that. We're missing out on some real basics, I think.
What are the complaints that people come to you with? Because of course,
yeah,
we start with blame, like he doesn't this and he doesn't that. What are the complaints you hear?
Yeah. Well, they also blame themselves, but so complaints I hear are I or he has anger problems and are overly reactive. So put a yes in the comment if that's you. Like if you overreact, or you feel like your partner does, like you say a little thing and they're like, oh my God, and they just have a big panic attack or a tantrum about it. So those are common.
Okay.
And that, I believe, has a lot to do with early trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And other ones that, like, honestly, a main reason people come to me is they're like, we're not communicating well. I want open communication. We're arguing too much. There's too much defensiveness and reactivity, all those things. And people just feel like the communication is off. I'm not feeling heard. I'm not feeling understood. And they don't know how to communicate in a way that helps them avoid those situations, those arguments, or escalating into an argument or the activity. So
Yeah. Okay. That I get that. And defense, I will just say, defensiveness is such, a surefire way to break down communicate, like to have a communication breakdown, right? Like that hair trigger, defensive, putting a wall up.
I didn't do it. I don't know what you're
Yeah.
talking about. It wasn't me.
It just breaks the flow. It's so hard to communicate when there's defensiveness. It's just, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Exhausting. So,
Mhm.
and does that come, I mean, you said that comes from trauma. Is it kind of, my experience, because I have had experience with this, my experience is it comes from, well, you tell me. Where does that come from? I mean, I'll just say, I'll finish my thought, because I had this in my last relationship. My experience is it comes from kind of when somebody's beating themselves up. Does that make sense? Like, they're kind of, my perception is, somebody's beating themselves up, and so then they feel like you're beating them up, but you're not beating them up.
Right. So that's part of it. So are you asking about where defensiveness comes from?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So I think it's that for sure. Like if they are hypersensitive to criticism because they got criticized a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
Now they've internalized the inner critic, so they're criticizing themselves all the time. So you say one little thing that's like, "Hey, could you mind putting the toilet seat down?" They're like, "What?" And they flap. Yeah, because they're already like so on themselves, like you're saying. So that's an overreaction example, but it could be they could get defensive. Well, you don't want to do it,
Hey everybody, we're hoping to get her back, so we're gonna get Robyn back so we can keep this conversation going. Isn't it so interesting? I love talking about this stuff because this is the real stuff, right? This is the stuff that causes us to eat. This is the stress that makes us unhappy, and then we eat to make ourselves feel better. Oh my goodness. It has so much to do with our pain, right? We have pain, and then we create more pain with our pain. So anyway, hopefully Robyn will come back in a second, but please put a comment in the comment section if you're relating to this, if this is something you struggle with. Okay, love to hear you and love to see your comments. I'm going to pull this up on my phone, but let's keep the conversation going. This is hard stuff. Relationship stuff is so hard. Trying to think of situations that I've been in that have caused stress. The defensiveness is huge. Fear of intimacy, how about that? You guys relate to that? I know because I did have sexual abuse as a kid, I know that was a big one for me. Just always feeling like I said, me against the world. And that, of course, in the bedroom, that came with me. It came with me where I didn't feel safe to open up. Or if I did open up, then I felt like I had to protect myself. I had to put my dukes up. It was not easy being with me. It wasn't easy being with me when I had those wounds, and not to mention, of course, when we're feeling bad about our bodies, after a binge, or if we've gained weight, we don't want to be touched. We shut down. And I don't know about you, put it in the comments if you relate to this, but I would create fights to create distance. Okay. I would pick fights, not consciously, but in looking back, I would see that I'd done that. I would create tension so that there was physical distance. So I didn't have to deal with intimacy. Okay. So I did that for a long time. My trauma that I had as a kid completely showed up in my, in my romantic relationship. So that was incredibly harmful. And the point is, without dealing with those things, without really clearing out the pain and the guilt and the ideas about myself and my body, without clearing that stuff out, I was doomed to repeat the same dysfunctional patterns. So that's why taking a look at this stuff is so important, and I did that through the process that I teach in my program. In my program, women are clearing away things that are causing them pain, and that's affecting their eating. That's helping them eat in a healthier way because they feel worthy of treating their bodies with respect. And then what happens is that plays out, in relationships. So, my clients find that their relationships improve when they start doing their work. When they start doing their work and start dealing with their own pain, low self-esteem, messed up ideas about themselves, it definitely helps them in their relationships, helps them communicate more effectively, more consciously, helps them be more loving, without fear. It's not always easy to love, right? Loving is not, it's not as easy as it sounds. My experience giving to another person, I had some ideas about how that might make me vulnerable. So it's something I had to learn, is how to give freely without fear or without feeling too vulnerable or feeling like I was going to get hurt or whatever. So there's a lot of stuff that happens, when we carry around those old ideas that come from trauma, those old wounds. So put it in the chat if you can relate to any of this. Let's keep the conversation going. I would love that. And and you deserve freedom. You 100% deserve to be free. And I find that the obsession with food and weight is an impediment to healing. Okay, when we're obsessed with food and weight, we're not looking at the real issues. And relationships and communication relationships is such an important thing to address. We have to address it. We have to have a life that feels good to us. Otherwise, we're checking out with food, trying to get away from the life that doesn't feel good to us. And that's why we can't push this stuff. We can't brush this stuff under the carpet. We have to address it. We have to get happy. We have to get happy so that we like the life we're in. We don't want to check out. We don't want to numb out. So please put it in whatever your what's your thing? Put it in the chat. What's your thing? What's the thing that's making you feel stuck in your relationships? Love to hear about it. Love to keep the conversation going. And when Robyn comes back, she lives in Costa Rica. So I think that's why we lost her, is she has spotty Wi-Fi. So anyway, we'll bring her back another time. But I'm just happy to pop in here and discuss something that's really vital for our healing process. So please put it in the chat. If you have any questions for me, or for Robyn, put them in the chat. What's your biggest pain point in relationships? What's the thing you keep stumbling over? Love to hear about it and love to support you. Okay? Have a great... Hey, we're back. We're back for part 2 of 3 keys to conscious communication. I have Robyn Smith here. We had a little tech issue earlier, so we're back to close the loop and really get down and clear on what these keys to conscious communication are. Thank you, Robyn, for fixing your internet situation and being here again. I know that took some work, so we thank you for coming back. It's great to have you back.
Thank you for your patience. Sorry about the interruption there.
Yeah, no worries. So let's dig in, because we had for those of you who are just watching, you can watch the previous recording here in the Secret Sauce group, and please continue to comment. But yeah, so So those of us, who are emotional eaters and we have trauma of some kind, big or small, and that's all, it doesn't really matter. It's like what our experiences are and what decisions we made based on experiences we had when we were younger. That obviously informs our communication patterns. We talked about defensiveness. We talked about shutting down. I continued a little bit more about intimacy and fear of intimacy. I know that was an issue for me. So how do we solve this? And tell me what these 3 keys are.
So I'm giving you today what I consider the sort of foundational keys for conscious communication. Like these have to be there first in order to build on top of, right? So
Sure.
other skills can come on top of these. And I feel like they're fundamental and basic in a way, but a lot of people do not have them in place. So that's why I wanted to pull these forward. So the first key is good eye contact. And,
Ooh.
and that was, it's tricky on Zoom because the camera's up here and you're down there. And, I find myself going, where do I look? But in general, when we're with people in person, we can tend to be thinking and looking around, or looking at our phone or occupying ourselves with other things. And then the other person doesn't feel seen and connected with as much as they could if you're actually making solid eye contact, nodding your head, helping them know that you're with them, especially if you're having an important conversation. So that, believe it or not, is so basic, but it's really important. I know it is for me. When my husband's preoccupied, I'm like, I'm not going to talk to you until I know you're with me, because I don't want to waste my energy and I want to be heard. And so that's something we can ask for too. If we're not getting it, we can make a time. Hey, when can you sit down? So this kind of connects to my second key.
Wait, I want to stop because that is really big. Like that's huge. And I'm glad you brought that up because I did not expect that. So it's huge because it is simple and yet it's impactful when we don't do it. Either we're not being seen, by the other person, they're distracted looking at their phone, but I am totally guilty of that, and just looking at, all it takes is one glance at my phone and I'm in another world, and that takes me out of the present. It takes me out of the intimacy of communication. And I can see how not having eye contact can contribute to that distance. And I think that we contribute to it and don't realize we're part of the problem, right? And that is such a simple fix, but it's a really big deal if we're not doing it.
Yeah. Yes. So
Love
true.
it.
Yeah, I would say that for some people, eye contact is really difficult because of their early trauma. When you've had trauma in the womb or in the first 6 months of life, it's actually a lot harder for you to make connection with people. You're scared of connection. And so you are going to tend to look down more or look away or look to the side. And so I just want to say to you, if that's you, I understand, and don't be hard on yourself if it's hard for you, and just notice it and own it and do your best to make eye contact as best you can.
Yeah, but it's true. It's
scary.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think for those of us who have had fear of intimacy, and being seen and being held and being, like when you are eye to eye, there is an intimacy there. I heard intimacy as yeah, say it again.
Into me see.
Yeah, into me I see. So it's real, or you see. So yeah, that's really important, and it might take some practice to really be able to look eye to eye to somebody you're communicating with.
Exactly. So number 2, ready for that? Is sort of what I was suggesting earlier, which is make sure if you have an important piece of communication, if you want to be heard and understood about something, make sure the other person is actually available on an emotional level and on a physical level. They're not already doing something, driving the car or cooking or holding big knives or, or they're preoccupied with something intense going on at work or whatever, that you demand their attention, you ask for it. So it's not just the eye contact, but they're physically and emotionally available. So you're asking for, it's like getting consent. Is this a good time? If not, when is a good time? Because that will set the whole tone for the conversation you're about to have. So
Absolutely. I like that. Yeah, because otherwise it's not good for either party, right? It's not that the person doesn't want to hear you, they just can't
right.
hold that space in that moment.
Exactly. And I hear from my clients sometimes, she's interrupting him while he's just had a bad thing happen at work. And she's then upset because he can't be available for her. It's like, well, I know we want someone to be there right now when we're having an issue, but it's also, it does take two.
Yeah.
We have to make sure it's fair,
Yeah.
to defend that. So, and the third one is sort of the flip side of number two, which is check in with yourself. Is this a good time for me? Am I able to be present? Am I overwhelmed already in a bad mood, already have a lot of emotions running through my system? Do I need to calm myself down? Do I need to just, get a hug first? So there's other things that we can do to make sure timing is right, space is right, to allow for the best communication experience. And we can't control our environment all the time or other people's emotions, but we can do our part to try and create the ultimate, like I say, foundational experience for positive and connected conversation.
Oh, I love that also. My former partner, spouse, he was he was a night owl. And so he'd just be getting going at 11 o'clock at night, and I'd be winding down, and he'd want to talk, sometimes he'd want to talk about finances at 11 o'clock at night. And I'd be like, dude, like, it took me a while to figure it out. So for a while, I'd try to have the conversation with him, but then I would get snippy and like short with him. And so we weren't communicating. And then I finally realized, oh, this is a bad time for me to have a conversation about finances. I'm trying to go to sleep. I'm trying to chill out and wind down. And he's just ramping up. This is never going to go well. And so I finally said, no talk about finances at night. Like, I'm just not doing it. Let's do it find another time during the day. And that was so helpful for me to realize I needed that boundary. Like, I just needed it. Once I stated it, that's the way it was. He'd go back into old patterns, like, oh, let's talk about that. I'm like, nope, that's like, I needed to be conscious of the fact that I can't do that. Like, it just doesn't work for me. And it made it so much easier overall when I realized that about myself, like, owned it for myself and communicated it.
Yeah. Awesome, Trish. Yeah. Boundaries are key. And that's something I teach about quite a bit in my groups. Yeah. So if we had more time together, we would just go into all the levels of communication, but I know we need to keep it a little brief today. So.
Yeah. But this is good stuff, and it's a great start. So the 3 keys to conscious communication, just to recap, are having good eye contact, like really work on being present. I think it's just presence overall, right? Is what we're talking about. So good eye contact, making sure each party is available and ready and has the space emotionally and, like you said, physically, like they're not being distracted by other things going on and can really be present. And that's the same as the eye contact. It's like, how can we be here, right now, and have this conversation where we're both available and ready for it?
Exactly.
I love it. So, but you have a cool gift, and I want to offer this to people because I think this is going to continue the conversation and help people learn more and be more effective in their communication. So can you talk about that?
Yes, I'm excited about this. It's a new checklist that I just created. So super easy read. It's just, you can read it in literally like 2 minutes. And it's my 10 keys, 10 for, what needs to be there in healthy conversations and healthy communication, and especially in difficult conversations, to help you stay out of arguing. So I'm giving you, it's a checklist so you can check off, is that happening for me? Is that happening for me? And there's basically 5 skills that need to be there and 5 things you want to avoid, so you don't find yourself repeating the same negative cycles and getting into arguments and feeling frustrated and disconnected.
I love it. So this is the ultimate communication checklist, 10 tips for navigating difficult conversations without arguing. Isn't that important?
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to put a link here in the comments section. And for those who are listening later, you can check the show notes for that. But thanks for that gift. That's really beautiful, Robyn.
You're so welcome. Yeah, I hope you like
Yeah.
it, and definitely reach out if you have some questions about it.
Well, that's awesome. And I know you do some really cool things, to help women have this, have communication be easier and flow with their partners and beyond. So thank you for your incredible work. You guys tune in to Robyn Smith, get the checklist, follow her, on Instagram, Facebook, just make sure you're getting her stuff because it's really so up our alley as emotional eaters and those of us who have had trauma in our past. We need these tools. We need to know how to communicate more effectively and how to not bring our past wounds into the present in our communication. So Robyn, thank you for your amazingness and for really bringing this to light for people so they can be happier and not have a reality they want to escape from by overeating. So that's so key, and I was talking about that earlier, is that when we have troubles in our relationships, it creates a reality we don't want to be a part of, and if we're not dealing effectively in our communication, we're going to want to just check out. And that's where the overeating comes in. It's like, I'm uncomfortable here in my here and now. I'm going to go somewhere else, and we get our binge foods and we watch TV, and it's like we're not dealing with anything. And obviously that's only going to cause more breakdown in our communication. So being able to communicate effectively is vital for having a reality we want to be a part of and don't want to escape from in food.
Totally agree. Yeah, and that presence piece that you pointed out is so key, right? Because the more connected we are with ourselves, the more we can do the work you're teaching, which is, how to stay connected and not disconnect. And then also with other people, like it just translates perfectly into our relationships as well. So that
You bet.
everything you're teaching is also going to help women in their relationships.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much. Great to be here with you. And everybody, please get that checklist. Start working on this. It's so important. So blessings to you, Robyn, and let's see you again soon.
Forward to it.
Okay, thank you.
Bye for now.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to get free support, insider health info, exclusive invites to events, and more, visit healyourhunger.com.